All right, I guess it's exactly 12 p.m. Central European time. Welcome, everyone. My name is Christoph Rottensteiner, and I will be your host for today's webinar. We really appreciate you joining us live today, especially after the last-minute time adjustments to the changes in our speakers' training schedule. But I think it's a good example that quick changes are sometimes unavoidable in the world of pro sports, and we really appreciate your understanding. Today, we are excited to have Marc Olmos, the strength and conditional coach from the Bamberg Baskets in the German Basketball Bundesliga, as our special guest. Marc will be discussing the application of heart rate variability in team sports with a focus on how it can be used to optimize player performance and recovery. He will also present recent research and practical examples on how heart rate variability helps coaches tailor training loads and monitor fatigue and improve decision-making in professional sports. The webinar will last about 45 minutes, and please note that it's being recorded and you will receive a link to the recording after the session. For those who are unfamiliar with Firstbeat Sports, some words also about our company. We are a Finland-based company with over 20 years of experiences in using physiological analytics to improve sports performance. Today, more than 1,500 teams worldwide rely on the Firstbeat Sports platform. And in particular, in basketball alone, we work with over 100 professional teams from top leagues, including also the NBA, NCAA, or in Italy, Serie A, German Basketball Bundesliga. Firstbeat Sports combines advanced analytics with a customized interface to support really you coaches, real-time monitoring, recovery tracking, performance management, and also much more. And our main goal is to make physiological data easy to understand and accessible for both coaching and the coaching staff as well as the players. When we have a look on the easiness of the use of the Firstbeat Sports system, it is a very efficient and automated tool that provides coaches and athletes with objective data on training load and recovery. Just explaining these 4 simple steps, it pretty almost explains how the system is working. Number 1, we have an automated data collection. That means that our sensor can automatically start collecting data as soon as it is attached to the player's body and heart rate data is streamed. Second point is that we have a tool to real-time stream the data on multiple devices for coaches as well as also for athletes. And I think the third and fourth point, which are highlighted here, really explain what is our approach. We want to automate reports, send it individualized to trainer and players, as well as having like the opportunity also to use our data with other platforms. So we want to be a part of the whole ecosystem and allowing also to export our data in athlete management systems or a second analytic platform like Power BI or Tableau. And exactly these kind of benefits are also used by our long-term client Bamberg Basket and today's speaker Marc Olmos. Yes, maybe give me some more minute to explain our guest speaker. Marc has really a great background in sport performance. As already mentioned, he currently serves as the strength and conditional coach for the Bamberg Baskets in the Basketball Bundesliga and has been also the strength and conditional coach for the Swedish national basketball team since 2021, if I remember correct. Marc has 4 years of experiences also coaching in Sweden in the top league and holds a performance certification from Exos as well as from the Barcelona hub. He has also currently many things to do. He is pursuing or conducting a PhD at the University of Barcelona, focusing on the application of heart rate variability in basketball. And today, Marc will be sharing insights exactly on this topic. So once again, welcome, Marc, and thank you for joining us today. The stage is yours.
Hey everybody! Thank you, Christoph, for the presentation. And first of all, I would like to thank Firstbeat for inviting me and letting me do this presentation with you. And I would like to also to apologize for the last second changes. I guess this is part of our reality in the professional teams. So we just need to adjust a little bit and try to get the best out of it. My main goal with during this time will be to give you some practical tools based on science and my personal experience. I would like that this information help you to build your own system using heart rate variability depending on your context. Before starting, I would like to share a little bit about my background to give you some context. All started like 2 or 3 years ago when I started my PhD, and I chose heart rate variability as a main topic. And then just some weeks ago, I could publish my first article. So here, that's the article I published, and most of the presentation will be based on my findings from this paper. This will be the four points that I will talk during the presentation. And I would like during the presentation to give you some practical applications based on my experience or real cases. So let's start with the first part. We start talking about what is heart rate variability. We need to know that our heart is not functioning like a metronome. It doesn't beat at constant time. So heart rate variability refers to the time interval between each heartbeat. These intervals can be either more constant or more variable, which indicate if our heart rate variability is higher or lower. Just to clarify the concept, our heart rate indicates like the total number of beats within a specific time frame, usually 1 minute, while our heart rate variability tells us about the time interval between each individual heartbeat. In this picture, I want to show you like, as we can see, like meanwhile our heart rate is being like 71 beats per minute, the time between this specific beat is 0.86 seconds. The main information that heart rate variability provides us is about our autonomic nervous system. This system controls involuntary actions such pupil contraction, saliva production, and here we have a list of the different actions that this system is controlling. And we can divide this system in two parts. We have the first part, it's the parasympathetic system, which activates when our body is in a relaxed state. And the other part, it would be the sympathetic system, which activates during a fight or flight response in potentially dangerous situation. Or for example, after periods of high stress, like a hard practice. It's important to clarify that both systems work together, with one predominating over the other one, depending on the stressor that our body is exposed to. So we can say that heart rate variability indicates which system is more active in each moment. On a practical level, heart rate variability provides information about our heart ability to adjust to different type of stressors, from physical to mental stressors. These are the three main uses of heart rate variability in the context of elite sports. In the first one, heart rate variability allowed us to evaluate how players are assimilating their daily training loads. It's important to note that heart rate variability is a sensitive tool and can be influenced by different factors. We need to determine if the training load is the primary reason for our heart rate variability results, or if there are other factors that are affecting the heart rate variability of our players. In this picture, we can see like the dashboard of the team or individual player that Firstbeat give us. And within the, as is showing here, we have internal and external load, and the green line is showing our quick recovery or heart rate variability values. Another function could be the evaluation of training adaptations, but over the long term. In this case, it's important to observe that the trends in heart rate variability, the trends of heart rate variability over several weeks. In this graphic, we can see how the Firstbeat software identify an optimal range. This will be the gray part for our acute loads based on internal loads measurements using trims. So taking this example, we could create a similar graphic where this optimal range, the gray part one more time, it will be based on the average heart rate variability values from the last 88 days. In this case, this is I built it by myself. So in this graphic, the green bars are showing us the daily heart rate variability values, and the blue lines show us the training loads based on the session RPE. If we see that the trend of this range, the gray line, is going down or declining, we could say that our players are experiencing negative adaptations for the training loads in a long term, and opposite. And if this line is going up, we say that our players are having a good adaptation to it. Another function of heart rate variability is to indicate the readiness of our players. It's important to recognize that these values are different and individualized for each person. Here I will show you some of the practical application. We can see how the Firstbeat software shows us the readiness of each player after a quick recovery test. For these ones that are unfamiliar with the software, this test lasts 3 minutes. And in the next section, I will explain how we can create our protocol to ensure this test is a reliable tool. Before moving to the next point, I want to explain how I use this test on my daily basis. We do the test in the morning when the players arrive at the facilities before any physical activity. Sometimes we do it as a team and other times individually, depending on the kind of practice we having. And then after 3 minutes, I can see the results, and I speak with the players who show bad numbers. For example, here we can have these 60, 46, 39% that they are having lower numbers, or this player, for example, is being like 4 days in a row in a low numbers. So with these questions, I asked them how they feeling, if they had any problems the night before, or if they having any physical or health concerns. And then from their answers, we can get really valuable information that can help us to adjust if it's possible. It's not always possible, but their individual loads, and yeah, to try to help the player to perform this day, or try to avoid some possible sickness or injury. Lastly, recent studies are exploring the use of heart rate variability as a tool for monitoring training loads during practice. Here, I'm sharing 2 of these studies in case you would like to explore them further. Here, the second section. Here we will discuss the variables. I want to highlight some of the parameters without going into too much details. I think this part is pretty complex and it's not worth it to go too much in detail. So I think it's important to know that we can split the variables into time domain and frequency domain. The first ones measure changes in heart rate over the time, while the second one analyze the different frequency components of the heart rate variability. It's also important to know that the RR intervals are the time intervals between each heartbeat, since many times we will listen this expression, intervals. Here we have the time domain variables, and these ones are the frequency domain variables. As I said before, we will not go deep on it. And then they might look a little bit complicated, but don't worry about it, since this is the most significant and practical variable, so it's the one you will see the most. And this one is related to the parasympathetic system, and the units are the milliseconds. I think that's the most important information on this part. On the third section, I will provide information that I hope will help you to collect your data and create your own protocol. First of all, here are some devices that can be used to collect data. Fortunately, the advancements in technology are making this process easier, especially in the context of sports. Like some years ago, the electrocardiogram, it was the only option. And nowadays, we have so many options that allowed us to record these values like daily. The most important factor when we're choosing our device is to ensure that the information it provides is as accurate and reliable as possible. So we can be assured that the data we are obtaining is correct. Here, here we have the 5 main points to keep in mind when we are building your own protocol. In this part, as I told you, I will give you some information based on my experience and based on science, and then you should take the information is good for you and create your own protocol. Frequency. How often should we measure our players? In this paper, the authors conclude that 3 recordings a day, they are enough for trained athletes, while 5 are needed for recreational athletes, since the recreational athletes experience a higher daily variations. However, it's important to note that more recordings lead to greater accuracy. Therefore, my recommendation is to record as many times as possible. If we could do recordings every day, I will try to do it, since some days we might have some problems and the recording maybe are not good enough. So I always say that as more data we have, it will be more reliable. In the second point is the time or the moment of the day that we will do the recording. We can record it. We can record during the night, after waking, during training, or after training. The choice will depend on our goals and the context of our team. Night recordings provide the most standardized measurements, but they can be affected by the quality of the patterns of the sleeping. The measurements taken after waking can also be considered fairly standardized, as long as we ensure that we always follow the same routine before recording. For example, if you just wake up and do the recording, you should do it always like this. If, for example, you drink water before taking the measurement, the best thing it will be always do it like this. If our goal is to measure the fitness level of our players, some research indicates that measurements taken during training might be the most appropriate. However, heart rate variability is depending on the intensity of the practice, so it will not be exclusively related to the autonomic nervous system. Lastly, if our context only allowed us to take measurements after training, we need to be aware that these values will be affected by many factors. So from my perspective, measurements taken after waking are the most recommended option. I understand that it's not always easy or even possible to ensure that all our players take their measurements right after waking. For this reason, I will provide some alternatives that could be more applicable in the elite sports environment or in your own context. We could take the measurements at rest just before starting training. This might be easier to control within your team, as you can remind the players and be present during the measurement. Even though this measurement will be affected by the activities that the players did before arriving at the practice, if we are training in the morning, these activities are likely to be minimal and fairly consistent each day. Some tips include like avoiding caffeine, and in an optimal situation, the measurement should be taken on an empty stomach. As I told you, here I show you a real situation, how some players are performing the quick recovery test before practice on their own. And in the second picture, we can see how the test is done during the video session before practice or before a game. Duration. How long should we spend or should be the recording of heart rate variability? This research showed that 2 minutes is enough to obtain reliable values. They propose 1 minute from stabilization, followed by 1 minute of recording. Of course, in your protocol, this will depend on the device or software you're using. The quick recovery test performed by Firstbeat lasts 3 minutes. As a fourth point, we have the position. In what position should our player perform the test? These are the most common positions. The standing and lying down position are the most commonly used in the literature. However, for practical application, I would recommend the seated position. But the most important part in this point is always recorded in the same position, as the value we obtain can be affected by the position. As a last point, as a final point, we need to consider the conditions during the measurement. The autonomic neurosystem is highly sensitive to environmental conditions. This is why we need to standardize our recording environment to isolate the effect of the autonomic nervous system induced by the training as much as possible. In summary, we should perform our recordings 3 to 5 times a week, depending on the level of our athletes. The best time of recording is after waking, and the duration should be at least 2 minutes. I recommend the seated position, but the most important thing is always use the same position. Lastly, we need to control the environmental conditions as much as possible. Now we have some information to create our own protocol, but we shouldn't forget our responsibilities as a coach. From my perspective, that's even more important than the protocol itself. As a coaches, we need to constantly supervise our protocol and motivate the players to follow it. Here, a simple checklist in our task of our tasks as a coaches. First, we need to create our protocol that is easy to implement in our context. We should constantly motivate the players if we want to achieve relevant results. Explaining to the athletes the purpose of heart rate variability can increase their buy-in and engagement on it. Getting them involved in the process by explaining how this tool works can also be helpful. And finally, establishing like connections with the overall goals might also increase engagement. For example, if a player has poor sleeping habits, we can provide some tips to improve them and check if the heart rate variability improved by implementing those recommendations. At the final part, we have as the final part, we have the data interpretation. In this section, I will provide you with tools to analyze and create possible hypotheses based on the heart rate variability values of our athletes. The focus of our analysis will always be on the individualization of the results. As a general rule, we will observe that heart rate variability decreases after periods of high training loads. When our heart rate variability is low, the sympathetic nervous system predominates in our body, meaning that our heartbeats are more constant. Some authors confirm that low heart rate variability can negatively affect sports performance. However, this is not always the case. It is important to know that a low readiness score on game day doesn't guarantee poor performance. So it's important to explain this to the players to make sure, like, to see the results on game day is not affecting the player mentally. We should differentiate between acute changes, which occur in short term, and chronic changes, which are assessed after at least 4 to 6 weeks. In the first type, in the acute ones, will allow us to make small adjustments to the athlete's training sessions or lifestyle. In contrast, the second type will help us to understand the overall fitness condition of our players. Acute changes can be provoked by stressors such illness, poor sleep, low mental states, traveling, also, of course, high training loads, games. So as we discussed earlier, when we detect acute decrease in our players' heart rate variability, I recommend talking to them to identify the underlying issue. On the other hand, when we look at the chronic changes, we can detect potential positive adaptations to the training or indications of overtraining or chronic stress. Another thing to keep in mind or to look at is the coefficient of variability. This indicates the daily variation in our measurements. As mentioned earlier, this value tends to be higher in less trained athletes. So the professional athletes, they have a lower daily variability. During periods of high load, we can confirm that high daily variations are correlated with poor response to training and lower performance improvements. So it's important to understand that daily variability does not have a linear dose-response relationship with the training loads. That means that if a player has high heart rate variability values, but also high daily variability, it's likely that this player is struggling to assimilate the training loads. Regarding recovery, we should note that a reduction of training loads might lead to an increase of heart rate variability and, of course, usually an improvement of recovery perceptions. When we have high heart rate variability, the parasympathetic nervous system predominates, meaning that intervals between our heartbeats are less consistent. So we could say that our body is in a recovery mode. However, it's important to clarify that the recovery of the autonomic nervous system is faster than the recovery from the muscle damage. Therefore, it's possible that even when the heart rate variability values are high, our players' muscles might not be fully recovered yet. When we analyze the data, we should keep in mind that that could be other factors affecting our heart rate variability results. As we said before, the heart rate variability is a really sensible tool. For example, traveling, days off, and also mental aspects can lead of a lack of correlation between heart rate variability and our training loads. For example, we think that after a day off, our heart rate variability should go up since the players can recover, but it's not always like this since we cannot control what the players are doing on the day off. To conclude this presentation, I will talk about the importance of individualization by showing you a real case of how we can use this tool in your team. Here we have the team and individual dashboard for the same period of time provided by Firstbeat software. The orange bars indicates trim, which is an internal load parameter, while the purple bars represent movement load. The green line show daily readiness based on the heart rate variability. And here we can analyze a little bit these both graphics. In the top graphic, we can see that as we get closer to the games are with the square. As soon as we go closer to the game, the loads are going down and the readiness of the player is increasing. So in these both cases, we can interpret it that the players are effectively assimilating the training loads. But in parallel, this player, in the lower graphic, we can see that this player has lower readiness values for 3 consecutive days. This could be a possible situation that this player was experiencing like some kind of discomfort or mild symptoms of illness, and then this made like the readiness went down. In this case, we could talk to the player and ask him how he feel, and maybe we can adjust or reduce some kind of load for him. And then as soon the symptoms were gone, the player readiness values increase significantly. Some days later, we can see that the player is having a low readiness value on a game day. Here, we can also interpret it or understand that this could be due to the acute stress, such a pre-game anxiety, or maybe because poor sleep after traveling or sleeping outside home. So we can see that the readiness values, it can have different meanings. Returning to the top graphic, we can see that in this situation, even after a recovery day, the 28, Wednesday 28, it was a low load day or recovery day, the team readiness value are lower than before. In this case, we can deduce that the team activity, we did a team activity. The team activity that we had during the recovery day did not allow the players to recover properly, and you can see it reflect on the readiness. These are a few examples of how we can analyze and interpret heart rate variability data for our athletes, both individually and as a team. Just to finish, now is the moment we have all the information, all the theory, and now is our moment to put it into the practice. And as a takeaway message, I would like to highlight that I know that heart rate variability can seem like quite complex, but there is no, from my point of view, there is no better way to learn about it than test it and try it. I started this journey by taking measurements on myself for several months. After that, I tried just to do it with some players that they look interested on it. And then by the time I realized that this could be a helpful tool to implement with my athletes and with all the team. Another important point is not to overanalyze. There will be times when we cannot find a clear explanation for certain results, but this shouldn't stop us from using this tool. Additionally, I want to emphasize that heart rate variability should assist us in our daily decision making. However, it should never lead to confrontations with the players. I know that sometimes it can be difficult to get daily measurements from our athletes, but our approach, or at least from my point of view, should always be to convince them that this tool can be helpful for their performance, and this can help the coaching staff to help him to perform. If we find that it's not working with some players or some individuals, we should be able to adjust or explore different solutions for these athletes. And finally, I would say that heart rate variability is a great secondary tool. With this, I mean, I would never rely on it as my primary or unique measurement for training load, but I believe it can be an excellent complement to our overall training load system. As I mentioned before, all this presentation is based on this article, but I also use some another bibliography that you can check it here. And yeah, to close this, I think it's time. I don't know if we have some time for questions. And in case you couldn't be in the streaming, I will be open to answer to questions on my email or my social media. That's it for my side.
Yeah, thank you, Marc, for your presentation and the insights from the field. It was really inspiring and highly relevant to today's topic. And I really have to say, based on my 10 years of experiences at Firstbeat and working also very closely with all the pro teams, customers, what we have, I fully agree with you that in particular in Central Europe, and I would say even also in Northern Europe, coaches prefer a straightforward linear approach when it comes to athletes' training load management. But as you explained, heart rate variability is a great example of why this approach doesn't always work. It challenges coaches to take a more holistic approach of their athletes, and heart rate variability or our QRD data don't follow a simple pattern, but they are invaluable tools for starting meaningful discussions with the players, hopefully. And yeah, also we got like from our participants a lot of nice questions, and one of them would be like, when I start with the first question to you, Marc, our audience is asking what kind of compliance you face from the players when it comes to the monitoring of heart rate variability, and how you react on those compliances in a team setting.
I mean, I would say like, I mean, I use it the last 2 seasons, I use it like more often. This season is like the one I'm using it the most. And I would say like around 50, or no, I would say even more, 60-70% of the players, like they do it. For me, the key is like the first weeks or the first months when you implement the tool. You need to make a clear protocol, explain the players why we do it, and they need to feel that is some output coming out of this data. If we don't do anything with the data, by the time the players will get tired of it.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe I continue because this second question quite well fits to the first one. And I have to say also during my sports science studies almost 15 years ago in Austria, I was always taught, you know, when it comes to fitness testing, you need to take care of the standardized environment, test environment. So like one question was how you really argument conducting a heart rate variability test during a video session when the players are maybe stressed because of the video sequences, what the coach is showing, or what kind of arguments you have to conduct a heart rate variability test in that kind of setup.
Good question. I had same question when I started doing it, okay? And then I talked with some of the Firstbeat colleagues, and they recommend me to start the test. I mean, we can start the testing individually. So I just started testing when the heart rate of the player is under 60, is under 60. I mean, of course, like at some moments this heart rate goes up, but usually, if the video session is in the morning and the players they didn't do any physical activity before, it's like something that you can achieve easily. So I feel like if the heartbeat is under 60, the numbers or the values I will get, it's the numbers that I can trust.
All right. Yeah. So, and I think this is also a good feedback, because it explains also the challenges from conducting like fitness tests or quick recovery tests in a team setting, and you need to find like your own way in that sense, where you are able to conduct the certain test protocols, what you think are still useful. And I think also, like from our side as a company, we don't want to make too strict rules. Do you that, like as you explained in your presentation, to do the quick recovery test already in the morning at the training facilities? After the training, I've seen it also, or with a certain load before, that you are like sitting, for example, on the bike, and do it afterwards. So, and somehow you standardize certain protocols for your environment in that sense, and then apply it like seasonally, the results for your players. And maybe we still have time for one last question. How do you communicate really? Like this is a quite, because really is written in big letters. How do you really communicate the quick recovery data, the results with the coaching staff?
I mean, actually, like the information, specific information of the daily results, I usually don't talk to the coach about it, since I experienced that sometimes low readiness makes like the coach think that this player is not ready, or can make like the coach is taking some kind of decision that it is not the best for the player. So in this sense, my goal is always to protect the player, of some like mistake, because we cannot take like the results as something that is like for sure is something good. So the first thing is like talk to the player and make sure like, okay, everything good or not? So the communication with the coach will be about what the player is telling me. Like maybe the player told me that today he just had like 1 hour of sleep, he had a stomachache. So in this moment, I say, okay, now is moment to communicate to the coach, because these are relevant, or maybe to the physio or the doctor if it's needed. So I never communicate directly the number of the readiness of the player to the coaching staff. I just like talk to the players, and from this information, I decide if it's like relevant or important to communicate to the coach, or I prefer just to keep it for me or between me and the player.
Thank you, Mark. A really great answer. I like it. That's sounds for me also like the way how you can engage the players to data, as well as like really like seeing then in a whole setup benefits, how you can use this. For me, one of the most powerful tool. All right. Thank you all for your thoughtful questions. Unfortunately, as I said, we want to stay in our suggested time schedule, so we run out of time for today's session. But we will do our best to respond to any unanswered question via email, also in the upcoming 2 days. A reminder also that we have been recording this webinar, so you will get a link and you can stream it afterwards. If some unclarities are available, then please feel free to text us also. And for us also very important is that we somehow inform you about our webinar series. Marc has already shared the slide because we would like to invite you also to our next exclusive behind the scene webinar on October 9th, already at 9 a.m. So for all early birds in Middle Europe, you will get like quite first-hand insights about how the Sydney Swans use Firstbeat Sports to enhance player performance and recovery. All right, and then for us also, like again, we would like to thank on behalf of Firstbeat, especially Marc, you for sharing your expertise today, and all participants for joining us. And once again, I apologize for the last minute changes. And lastly, if you have any questions or you would like to request a quote, please feel free to contact us at sports@firstbeat.com. Be sure also to follow us for the latest updates via our social media or newsletter, because I have to say I am excited. We are excited. Next week, there is something really nice on the way. We will launch our new team training session comparison report, which will include like not only movement data now, also the lab data. And along with those, we provide historical data comparison to help to contextualize your data, your results, to get a better understanding also how your players are acting on the pitch or during the training. So don't miss out this and yeah, I think that's also from my side for today. All take care and have a great afternoon. Bye bye.
Thank you.